Hello. My name is Dr. Ann Shaver for those students in the audience that may not know me. I am a professor of psychology at Fairmont State University. Tonight, I'm welcoming you to our second of three professional alumni showcases. This evening, we have a panel of individuals, social service individuals who are here to talk about the work that they do in relation to addressing adult-based social services. So this is pretty much the focus for the evening. With that, I will be asking a little bit later on. I will be doing a few introductions before we start what we call a Q&A, a question and answer period. And during that time, I have a number of questions that our behavioral science students have compiled for me over the last few weeks that they thought would be, they would like some answers related to that. So I will be doing that. My intention also is to keep this very informal. So what I want to tell the panelists that this will be similar to a classroom discussion. Other than the first question, I'm going to be having you all just tell us a little bit about what you do. But after that, if you have something that you want to say, just simply let me know. All right, and then we will just take the discussion very much in that direction. Before we get started, I want to mention, first of all, we have Dr. Slota. Dr. Slota is with us. She will be involved again in the chat. For that chat period, just make sure that if you have any questions that you would like further answered from the discussion in terms of what we're having, write those questions in the chat pertaining to the panelists or to the entire panel if you want us to throw a question out to you. My intention at the very end of the event, toward that last half hour, maybe a little bit longer, I would like for Dr. Slota, she will be coming on to relay some of the questions that are specific to the chat. So I won't be addressing chat questions through my time. We're going to wait, and then Dr. Slota will certainly be doing that. And then the reminder, and just to make sure that you remember to do this for any students, again, as Dr. Slota said before we started recording, just make sure that you place your extra credit, the course that you are wanting for extra credit, please put that in the chat for us. Now, what I would like to do, I would like to, again, mention, I want to do this as well. We've had a team of individuals who have been assisting us in the development of the showcases. And in that, again, Dr. Slota has been very, very vital in all of this. And also, I want to mention an alumnus, and this is Greg Kramer. Greg has been serving as our IT specialist for the forums. And I don't know, honestly, what we would have done or what we will do, because this isn't over until tomorrow evening without Greg's services. So I want to also acknowledge him. I would like to take the time right now to also welcome an individual, a very special individual who has been vital to the development of actually a number of components that are tying into not only this event, but we have our showcase slide presentation that is being developed and will be out to students to view very, very soon. This is Carolyn Canini. And Carolyn is our West Virginia State Department. She is the Director of Health Programs. And she's been instrumental in guiding us and providing support from the beginning of this grant, because you have to understand, we acquired the grant at the time. This was pre-pandemic. So we have really had to make some major, very, very quick modifications in order to specifically address the needs of the grant. And the needs of the grant, our whole goal here is to really promote for students to hear the information about how vital and important social services are. And again, from a state standpoint, keeping as many of you in West Virginia as possible to assist us with so many of the issues that we are certainly have been dealing with. Carolyn, would you like to say a couple of words to the group before we start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Shaver. It's great to be here. I got to sit in last night, and I particularly loved hearing everybody's pathways into their career path. It's just really interesting to hear how people got from where they were through their education to their jobs. I am the director of behavioral health programs for the Higher Education Policy Commission, and that's our state's coordinating body for all of the public higher education. And like Dr. Shaver mentioned, part of my role there is around behavioral health workforce development. So what kind of educational programs are needed to prepare the workforce that we really need to meet our community needs around substance use disorder, around mental health treatment and care, recovery, prevention, all of those areas. And so it's been great to be just a small part of this project, as well as 5 other institutions that have grants that are looking at different areas of the educational pipeline. And so great to be here, and thanks everybody. I'm going to put my information in the chat, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.
Carolyn, thank you so much. Again, very much appreciated. And if you can join us tomorrow will be our graduate information and graduate sharing of experiences. You may actually want to share some of yours with us. If you have time to come and join us tomorrow, we would love to have you. Now I would like to take the time to introduce the director of our Alumni Center, Alumni Services. This is Jeremy Hatcher, who has some words of welcome to our alumni at this point. Jeremy.
Thank you, Dr. Ann. I really appreciate being invited to this and talking to alumni any chance I get. This is also open for the students as well. So I only wanted to say a few words about being a member of the Alumni Association. So as a graduate of Fairmont State, we have a free Alumni Association. All members are a part of that. The most important part of that is actually updating your information. So if you're not getting any emails from the Alumni Association, that means you need to update your information. You can do that easily by our website or on social media. Actually, you can reach out and send a message. We try to get as much on social media as possible because as when I took over as alumni relations, the most important thing for alumni to do is share your story. It helps the students, but it also helps alumni in connecting and making see what other alumni are doing out there. In saying that, our website has some great benefits for alumni. One, we have a benefits page, which actually has some benefits for alumni. You can also give a class note and update us what your life status is if you had another baby or got a puppy or anything. Really, we'll take anything at this point. You can also start a chapter of alumni if you want to. We're putting together resources to help people form chapters of like-minded individuals, per se, health alumni. We also we also are starting a business network. So if you have a business or you know an alum that has a business, we'd like to advertise and help you share your business on our website. That's kind of the big part for me, is not asking alumni for money. It's asking you for your experience and your story. So I'm actually going to jump off real quick, but my email is just my name, jeremy.hatcher@fairmontstate.edu, and alumni and friends at fairmontstate.edu. And if you guys have any questions or want to know anything about alumni or any benefits or anything, please reach out. Thank you again, Dr. Ann, and tomorrow evening.
Jeremy, thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Before we get started with the question and answer period, I just want to mention to our students that, again, the people that you see in the panel right now are individuals who provide services primarily to adults. I do want to mention, though, there's such a diversity in terms of social service, and you will see that presented very much tonight as you meet the individuals who are part of the panel. You will be meeting, and if you want to kind of do this, that's okay. We have individuals here. We have two individuals. We have David and we have Michelle McCord. I would like to ask Michelle, is there any way that we could, can you move into a video if possible? If not, we're fine.
Yes,
Okay.
I will be able to. Yeah.
Thank you. We have Michelle, we have David, who are both, who do quite a bit of work, and actually they work in the area of social service administration. So you will be hearing and they've evolved in that, from clinical aspects on into doing that. We have social workers here this evening who work with adult and some individuals, if they do general kinds of therapy and general work, also certainly work with children as well. But tonight we'll be talking about those adult experiences, but you'll be meeting individuals who provide those services. We have a couple of individuals who work with more specific populations. We have an individual, we have Michael White. He's going to be talking about his work. And I hope, Michael, that you will not only share your information about VA, but your earlier work regarding homelessness. I think that we would love to hear that. Jennifer is a licensed psychologist. Many of you people in psychology may choose to go specifically into more clinical psych work, counseling psych work, which is very applied. We have Matraka, who works in adoptive services, and tonight she will probably be talking more about her work with parents in that type of process. We have Hannah. Hannah is also an academician. I believe, David, you'll be talking a little bit about your academic. He teaches courses. Some of you, as you graduate, you will be hearing from FSU. We may be at some point in time asking you if you would like to teach a course in maybe an area of specialization, or coming on as an adjunct, or down the road, possibly full-time with the various institutions in the state. Or you could, I'm just saying that as myself, I was a clinician and now I'm an academician. I still do clinical work, but I also do that. So we have a diversity of individuals here. I want to mention Greg. Again, he's an alumnus with us. He does, his work is in, and again, psychology, it's such a marketable area. We could go in so many directions with that. We have, not with us this evening, but law, medicine, you name it. And Greg has taken his direction into the area of educational technology. And I don't think he's finished his journey, but that is where, at this point in time, that he'll be talking about those experiences. So what I would like to do, I want to go ahead and start out by just calling on each of you. If you would just take a few minutes to, first of all, give us your job title, and talk to us a little bit about what you do and a little bit about that journey to that. We have to be somewhat brief, but again, we had plenty of time last night, and I think we'll be fine this evening as well. So let me just start on the screen on the left. Jennifer, could you start out and share some information about you professionally?
There it is.
How's that?
Okay. All right. I'm Jennifer Robinson. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been licensed, I've been a psychologist for 30 years, 25, 30 years. I don't remember. Anyway, I work in a private practice. I used to work in social work while I was in graduate school in foster care, and then I became a clinical psychologist. And I've worked in a private practice for about 21 years. And I recently started my own practice because the psychologist I work with retired. So this is a new part of what I'm doing, and doing my own business. And it's kind of exciting and stressful, but I love what I do. I see a wide variety of people. And right now I'm specializing, because the state is so backed up because of COVID, I'm doing a lot of disability and Title 19 waiver, which is a program for individuals with disability evaluations, as well as individual therapy, but mostly online with the therapy.
Thanks, Jennifer. Alyssa, could you go ahead and share some of telling us about you professionally?
Sure. In about, I guess, 16 days will be my 30th anniversary. I started out in geriatric social work. Actually, a few weeks before I graduated from Fairmont State, then went on to Head Start. I worked in higher ed, did a nice mix of direct practice and administration. I was the director of Catholic Charities, left there a few years ago. And I also did hospital social work and inpatient psychotherapy. Now I'm in practice with Shannon Walliser at Mind Body Wellness, and I'm doing therapy with adults via telehealth. When the pandemic began, we went 100% telehealth. I was a big critic of that before, and now I'm seeing how it has really, I have clients all over the state that otherwise probably wouldn't be able to seek therapy if we didn't have telehealth. And so, I mean, I always say I've done a little bit of everything. I left Fairmont State and got a master's in industrial and labor relations. Back when I went to Fairmont, we had an industrial psych track, and that's what I followed. Got a minor in human services. Did the ILR masters, and then later went back and got an MSW. The nice thing about psychology as a bachelor's degree, and I've said this for a long time, if you understand human behavior, no matter what direction you go in, it's going to take you far. So that's me.
Alyssa, thank you. Thank you. David, we'd love to hear from you.
All right. Hello. As she mentioned, my name's David Cutright, and my professional journey started back in 1999 when I enrolled in the undergrad program for psychology at Fairmont State. Dr. Ann, Dr. Joe were my teachers at the time. Once I got my degree there, I moved on to a job working for Valley Healthcare Systems, being a program manager of a flood program. And within a couple months, I was promoted to the program director. And after that program ended, I got a job at Valley Healthcare being a case manager. Now, within about 4 months of being a case manager, I got a promotion and I moved on to be a quality assurance manager. And this is a position that I've held since 2004. Some of my professional responsibilities are making sure that we are doing clinically best practice in terms of the treatment of our client, making sure that we're following all state and federal regulations. And during my time in this process, I really started to get an awareness of just how many opportunities present themselves in the behavioral health field for management positions. And there's a lot of times you get individuals who are really good clinicians, but not necessarily the best managers. And sometimes these people are promoted to positions that they're not comfortable with. So when you could have some experience in terms of management background, I mean, it's really advantageous. And if the right opportunity presents itself, that there's a lot of options out there for management level jobs. So based on this, I got my MBA. It really helped me understand the management side of things a little bit better. And this MBA led me to an opportunity as an adjunct professor at West Virginia Junior College, being a business instructor. Now, within a couple years of being here, I moved on to a general studies instructor, and I get to teach classes like psychology and communications and thinking. So it's a pretty neat experience, and I really did start to fall in love with the academic side of things. And from here, I obtained my master's degree in education, and I'm now one of the general instructor coordinators for the WVJC online division, which I've been doing since 2017. So my experience with psychology is it's pretty much everywhere. And if you have a good understanding of this field and really refine some of these other skill sets, it's going to present a lot of opportunities to you in the future. And that's all I got.
David, thank you so much. Before I introduce Michelle, I also want to just to recognize we have our ASL interpreter with us. Laurie Matheny is actually serving as the interpreter for all three forums. I do want to mention Laurie's is also a counselor, a school counselor. She's a counselor in Marion County. So I do want to mention that. She actually was interpreting last night when we had the child-based session. And during that, a number of you students were here for that. But I do want to mention that she is also a counselor. Let's see, the screen changed a little bit. Where's Michelle? Okay, Michelle. All right. Would you go ahead and share your journey?
Yes. So my name is Michelle McCord, and I am the executive director of Hope Incorporated, which is the local domestic violence and sexual assault program here in Marion County. I actually started here as an intern from my studies at Fairmont State. I have I majored in sociology with a minor in psychology. And so I interned here, needed an internship, and my advisor sent me this way. Didn't know that 21 years later, I would still be here. So as I finished my internship, there was a position available through some grant funding, and they offered the position to me. So I started out as the case manager here, working with victims and helping them to safely obtain their DHHR benefits like TANF, food stamps, things like that. Then I started working a little bit in the financial arena of the agency, kind of doing both. I've done a little bit of everything, I feel like, here. Did some prevention stuff for just a minute. And then in like 2005, I moved into full-time financial work with the agency. And then in 2013, I became the financial officer for the agency. And then in 2018, I moved on to being the executive director of the agency. So I've kind of been a little bit everywhere here at Hope. But I do have to agree with what everyone else has said. With that background in sociology and psychology, I think that there are many opportunities for you out there. Maybe even opportunities you weren't even aware of when you were in school, because I didn't even know what Hope was at the time. I just went and interviewed for my internship and did not, ever imagine that I would still be here 21 years later. But I honestly can't imagine myself anywhere else. So.
Michelle, thank you. I would like Michael. Michael, would you go ahead and share your journey with us?
Hold on.
Okay, hold on, Michael. We can't hear you. You're muted. Greg, any help?
How about now?
Yes, yes.
And now not.
No, no.
Was there a second ago?
Unmute. Unmute.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm not touching anything. I'm not touching anything. I'm Michael White. I am a 2013 alumni of Fairmont State. I psychology. Have a minor in business information systems, and I would say that Fairmont State was truly the place where I found myself, and I truly, am indebted to the program. It really sets you up for success. If that's what you are looking for, they really do a great job. So I graduated from Fairmont State and completed my master's at WVU in social work. And I had a lot of really good experiences through my undergrad in completing a field placement at the VA here in homeless services. And I spent many years working in homeless services after I graduated at a local community health center right down the street from Fairmont State at MBA. Helped develop a program there with homeless services, had opportunities to work in youth residential. But I came back, I always circled back to homeless services, helped develop the first homeless program in a trauma one level 1 trauma center at Ruby Memorial for veterans and just the general population experiencing homelessness. So it was the first one in our state that really prioritized setting up specific interventions to ensure that we're providing effective and really good service for individuals experiencing homelessness. And then I've transitioned to the VA for the last year, working in homeless services. And Monday starts my first official day as the admissions coordinator in our in our residential treatment facility. So I'll be the admissions coordinator running all of our 3 tracks for mental health, PTSD, and substance use disorders. So that will be a significant change from what I'm used to doing, but I'm really excited for the opportunity. And like Alyssa said, social work really sets you up to do just about anything you want to do. And I love that flexibility. So it's been wonderful.
Michael, thank you. Thank you. Matraka, we'd love to hear from you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Matresa. I feel honored to be on a panel with all these veterans of psychology. I'm a baby over here. So I would consider myself to be an alumni of Fairmont State mentally and in my soul. I actually started and did most of my schooling at Fairmont State. I took a break in between school and graduation because I quite honestly, just didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have everything together. So for those of you students that are out there that are discouraged about where your clock is with your career or being behind in where you should be or being, confused and all those kind of things, I get it on a level deeper than you can imagine. So in my break between schooling, I worked as a daycare teacher for 3 years, which in childcare. I actually graduated from Cal U in Pennsylvania, California State University. And I currently live in Connellsville, which is about 30 minutes outside of Morgantown, with a bachelor's of science degree in psychology and a minor in sociology. The company that I work with is called Family Care for Children and Youth. And the office that I work in is located in Greensburg, but we have 4 offices in the state of Pennsylvania. It is a foster care adoption agency. So my job, like Dr. Ann was saying, kind of, I think, fits on today's panel and tomorrow's panel. And what my job is I work with foster families and foster children that are in our agency. And I work together with Children and Youth Services, CYS, et cetera, so on and so forth. We work together in coordination to help the children that are in our care and help place them. And my job is to make sure that the children are happy and doing well within the foster families, and also that the foster families and parents and biological parents somewhat as well are doing what they need to be doing for the success of the children and the care of their homes, et cetera. So that's my job.
Trish, thank you so much. My apologies. On your first name.
No, it's a story of my life, Dr. Ann.
Oh, gee. All right. We have Dr. Hannah Bland here. Hear that, Dr. Hannah, you received that not terribly long ago, and we want to congratulate you. We need you to unmute. Okay, we're going to need you to unmute, or Dr. Slody, can we unmute?
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we'd like to hear.
Okay. Okay. So like Dr. Ann said, my name is Dr. Hannah Bland. I have my undergraduate that I completed with Fairmont State in 2014. I had a major in psych and a minor in philosophy. I went straight into a master's program and got my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and then went straight into my PhD and got my PhD in counselor education and supervision, which I finished last year. During that time period, I did a lot of different things. So I did foster care and adoption work for a while. I worked with the State Sexual Assault Coalition for a period of time. I did outpatient services, doing individual therapy. And now I've landed kind of in my dream job, what I wanted to do when I was an undergrad. I'm working with incarcerated populations. So I work at 2 adult male prisons full-time. I'm the only therapist for both facilities. So it's super interesting work because I get everything from guys who got busted with like just a little bit too much pot in their car, all the way to guys who are convicted murderers. So I get a really broad range. I get to see a lot of different diagnoses. So I do individual therapy. I also do all of the crisis work. So individuals who are on suicide watch, I take care of all of their stuff. I also go see all of the guys that get moved into segregation because they were deemed unsafe to be in general population. Outside of therapy, I'm also an adjunct professor for Waynesburg University. So I teach in their master's counseling program. So if you have questions, ask me. Also, if you want to connect, I can leave my email and we can talk about the program. And I also teach counseling courses in their undergraduate program. And that's it.
Thank you, Hannah. Tomorrow, I want to remind you all, tomorrow night, if you have questions specific to graduate programs and experiences we will have, and I believe Hannah will be back with us tomorrow evening as well. We will have a number of people there to talk about their experiences with you and answer a number of those very important questions about a graduate school. Hannah brought up something that I do want to mention. Again, in psychology, you do not, you actually needed a minor. You are not required to have a minor in our program at this point in time. But since we have so much flexibility in the number of elective courses that people take, some people, it could be advantageous for you to expand your experience, your repertoire of skills by adding a minor. Criminal justice can be a fantastic minor. There's so many areas, all kinds of minor areas that can widen the scope of your understanding. So again, as Hannah was mentioning, so many people we find in social services, working in the areas of corrections. So some of you may want to consider that if as a possibility for you. Now, as we talk about diversity in terms of what you can do with psychology, because remember, you're learning how to understand people in relation. Psychology is one of the largest undergraduate programs, because it provides such skills that people can take on and use in so many, career areas. We have Greg Kramer, and Greg, I really appreciate you talking about the direction that you took. You took your profession. Greg, can you hear?
I'm here.
I thought for a minute, I do want to mention Alyssa and Greg are married. I thought I was going to have to tell Alyssa to go find Greg. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to speak this evening. Well, I graduated in 2014 from Fairmont State with my degree in psychology. And I had an internship. Well, let me just step back a bit. My intention was to work with children, troubled youth or young, younger than, teenagers and such. But I did an internship at the Child Advocacy Center. And being exposed to that made me realize that my temperament was not going to be suitable for working with abused children, simply because my emotions of revenge were front and center. So what I did was I went back a little bit and stuck with what I knew prior to going back to school, and that was IT work. I currently work at WVU at the John Chambers School of Business and Economics, running their tech support and the help desk. But I'm going back to grad school soon, looking at psychology and education. The drive for psychology is still there, and I think I use what I learned during those classes, during my time in school, every day, because I'm one-to-one with individuals. So you kind of have to, assess what their real needs are and what their mental state is on the fly. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I would like to do at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share with you some questions from our students. And I'd like for you to, some of you, to answer these questions. One question that I would like to mention right now is, in the work that you do, what would you identify as one major advantage to what you do? A benefit or an advantage to what you do? It could be professionally, it could be personally, whatever. And what would you identify as one disadvantage? So kind of think about that. Anybody kind of prepared to start out, and y'all don't have to answer all of these questions, but just let me know if.
Well, for me personally, one advantage that I've had since I've went into the quality assurance side with all of the transfers to like electronic records and so forth, I've actually got to go home and work, and I've been a homebound employee for the last 14 years. So I do everything that I do through email, through video chats, things of that nature. And taking this particular direction, well, it really is what been able to land me that opportunity. So that's one major advantage of the career path that I chose.
Okay, David, a disadvantage? What would be something that you might say would be more of a disadvantage regarding the work you do? Something that you don't look forward to?
Well, I do like working with people, and that is something that I miss a lot. And so when you get to the quality assurance, more the administrative side of things, everything's kind of secondhand. You're reviewing other people's work. You're helping them deal with someone a step away. So that would be the downside for me, is I do miss that one-on-one contact. I do miss, being able to work with the people every day. So that would be a pretty big disadvantage to what I do.
All right. Anyone else who might like to?
I'll
Melissa?
go. I guess the big advantage to what I'm doing now is, well, number one, I love it. I really love working with people, hearing their story, and help guiding them to find resolution with whatever their issue may be. And it's also very flexible. I am also working from home. Even before the pandemic, I was in administration and I traveled all over the state. So I worked from home there too. So I think our fields tend to allow a little more flexibility. I guess the downside right now is when you are working in therapy, I mean, there are times that people will cancel. However, I mean, I'm so busy right now, when somebody cancels, I just am like, oh, okay, I get an hour to do something else. But I guess the positive is also the negative. We have to carry a lot. I've heard nothing shocks me anymore, as far as the stories that I hear. And sometimes carrying that can get heavy. So I meet with my coworker weekly. We debrief. So taking care of your own mental health is a major issue. And I have seen, yeah, and everybody's agreeing. I have seen what real burnout do to a practitioner, and it's not pretty. I've had friends have to go on leave. So that can be the downside.
Michael.
Am I working?
Yes.
Yes. So I 100% agree with Alyssa in regards to one of the disadvantages. And one of the things that is really important in getting into the field, at least in my experience, is that self-care piece is it's the elephant in the room, and it's the elephant that sometimes we need someone to tackle for us and tell us that we really need to do that. And it's hard to do when you really have the heart in the work you're doing. But it's taken me 5-6 years now to figure out that I need to have the same passion that I have for the work that I do, that I have to have that same passion to actually put into my own self-care, or I won't continue doing the good work that I know I can do for the veterans and the individuals that I have the privilege of working with. That's hard, and it's a hard pill to swallow. And I can say that Dr. Ann and Dr. Joe told me so, but it's hard. It's hard. One of the advantages that I've had is in regards to having the flexibility to do a lot of different things, is that you get to really kind of find your niche in regards to what do you really enjoy doing, and what population do you really fit with. And you're actually not set on that population. You can try and then say, this isn't actually where I find my passion. This isn't my why. This isn't like what wakes me up in the morning to run into that fire. Because social services in many ways, and social work and psychology and healthcare in many ways, you run in the fire every day. And we have to have that fire. And it's the other added benefit, and I'll end here, is that in almost all instances of everyone working, all of our occupations on the screen today, we are working in broken systems, and we are working with individuals that have been marginalized and victimized by these systems. So we actually have the added benefit and advantage of being that new person, that new opportunity to have a system that has failed a lot of these individuals many times work for them. If we have to finagle it, we are willing to do that. So I think that's a huge advantage.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Anyone else regarding what you like about what you do, and what something that you don't really like?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so for me, the upside is I feel like I have the best job on the planet. It's what I've always wanted to do. I might be biased, but it is the best. What I love about it is in many cases, I am the first person who has ever been positive, that has ever been a support for these groups of people. So it's really rewarding to feel like you're making a difference and you're able to show them that unconditional positive regard and kindness that they've always needed. Also, I love that I get to work with such a broad range of individuals. So one session, I might be seeing someone just for generalized anxiety. My next individual might be a full-blown borderline personality, and seeing how they work within the correctional system is fascinating. The downside to the job, I've been maced a couple of times, so that was a solid downside. So there are some dangers to working in corrections. I've been caught in mace. I've had individuals try to grab me. So it's really different in that aspect, but I love it. So it doesn't bother me. The other downside is really that you're working with a lot of individuals who are not familiar with mental health. So a lot of the officers, the DCR management, the professionals, the higher ups, they don't understand that many of the inmates are behaving in these ways because of their mental health, not because they're bad people. So a lot of it is advocacy and education on my part to make sure we can all be on the same page for those inmates.
Okay. Anyone else want to share? Michelle?
Yes. So an advantage for me, and I don't know if I'd necessarily understood this as a student. I knew I was going into a line of work where you help people, but once you really get in there and do the work and experience what that feels like to actually help others, that is something that no one can take away from you, that feeling. And that's something that has grown more and more important to me as I've continued on my journey from school. But I do want to reiterate what Michael said about the disadvantage. As much as that helping can be rewarding and really carry you through another day, that same thing can be what takes you out of the next day, and making sure that people take care of themselves. Because I've seen a lot of advocates come through our program. The emotional toll will be part of your journey, and you just kind of need to be prepared for that up front. And I think sometimes people aren't always prepared for that, and that's something that depending on what line of work you go into, that's something you need to be aware of when you do that.
What I'd like to do at this point, because I'm hearing, and we heard this last night in the child and adolescent professional session as well, the need for self-care. And that's something that in undergraduate programs we really tried, like Michael said, to really help people to become aware of the need very early to develop skills and awareness regarding self-care. And we hope that the graduate programs do the same thing in terms of getting people to do that. So, and this actually is one of our questions. What do you all do that you do now that you believe has been successful in your own self-care? Any strategies, anything that you do? Jennifer?
I was just going to say, I think it's really important when you're in this field to be able to set very clear, healthy boundaries for yourself and your clients, because I think usually that's people that I see get burnt out is they don't have really good, healthy boundaries. They take their work home with them, or they allow, it depends on the type of work you do, but you have to set, like I set very clear boundaries with my clients, like they're not allowed to just call me any time of the day, because that's not healthy for them either, to have that access to me. But it's not healthy for me. And if I get burnt out, I'm not going to be a very good clinician if I'm not taking care of myself. So I think setting clear boundaries is really important. And then just taking that time to relax and finding out, what is it that I do that makes me feel good? Like I have a jacuzzi. I like to sit outside in the jacuzzi and just relax and just talk to my husband at the end of the day, like nothing else going on, just talk, just relax. And so I think it's important to, also have those professional friends that you can sort of, just debrief to sometimes if you've had a really tough situation that you've had to deal with. And that debriefing just helps me. I'm just like, go to my coworker and say, this is what happened, and, process it myself. And then I'm able to move on and sort of put it in a shelf. And that was that. And so I can move forward.
Jennifer, thank you. Anyone else? What do you do for self-care? Alyssa?
I try to practice what I preach. I work with a lot of people dealing with trauma. Anxiety is probably my second biggest issue. And all the things that I tell them, I do try to practice myself. I make sure I get outside, even on a crappy day like today. I make sure I get outside every day. There's great restorative properties in being outdoors, being in green spaces. I make sure that I eat right and sleep, and I try to get enough sleep. And again, to just echo what Jennifer said, setting those clear boundaries are probably, and that's probably something that in school we don't hear as much about. People tend to talk about, the things you do for yourself for self-care, but they maybe don't talk so much about the boundaries. It's more than just, going to the spa, and just setting those clear boundaries. And I think of a couple settings where I worked. I was in a union. I was in the same union as a therapist. I was in the nurses union, and having a background in industrial and labor relations and industrial psych, I feel like I got to bring this up. One of the biggest things to keep from having burnout in the workplace is a union. And there is quantifiable evidence that supports that. So, if there are opportunities like that in the workplace, I think we talk about systemic change. That's one of the changes. If we want to get people to have less burnout, we need to change some of these systems to look out for the well-being of people.
Anyone else? Anything that you would want to mention? Okay, yes. Patrice, yes. Okay, unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm newer, so I am learning all of these techniques that you guys have been talking about. Some I'm learning via the easy way, and some I'm learning via a harder way. It may seem simple, but the coworkers that I work with, I work in a smaller office, and they have more experience than I do. I got into the habit of I've been with this company for 8 months now, because I'm 30 years old, but I just got my bachelor's degree. So I've been with the company for 8 months. I got into the habit of being still loving and being compassionate about what I'm doing, but I have a cell phone and I have a work phone, which I don't turn off very often. And I take home with me, and I'm around it even after hours, even though we have an on-call person. And I got into the habit of saying, if you need anything at all, feel free to reach out to me. Sometimes that's not the best idea to do with all of the people that you're working with, for the large population, because, some people, I don't want to say they take advantage of it, but you end up getting to a point where I had to take a personal day because I was so overwhelmed with what was going on, because I felt like I was their case manager. I wanted to be able to handle what they were going through because I knew more about that case maybe than the on-call worker. So at this point, I've gotten to the point that I don't necessarily say that. I make myself available, but I reach out to the proper procedures when telling my clients and my families about how they can get a hold of somebody, whoever they need to get a hold of after hours or on the weekend, because otherwise there's just not enough coffee and Tylenol in the day sometimes. The other thing is very simple, but my coworker said this to me and I try to practice it. At the end of every day, when I'm leaving the office, I say to myself, have I done everything in my power to do the best that I could for today? Or have I done my job to the best of my ability today for this particular case? If I haven't, have I tried my best? Yes. Okay, I can start again tomorrow.
Okay. Anyone else? These are great ideas. Michael, anything or just, okay. Anyone in terms of that? Okay. Oh, Hannah, were you going to say something else?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. For me, I think there are two things that kind of keep me together. One, I found that I got really overwhelmed when I wasn't prioritizing my time well. There was a point where I was doing my PhD, working full time, doing internships, and teaching part time. And it was a lot. So what I found for me, my biggest form of self-care was like getting one of those really nice schedulers and like buying whatever stickers I wanted and having a very clear, organized schedule. It made me feel less overwhelmed. Things were less chaotic. And it helped me just to stay in line. For me, the other big thing was also working out. That was my form of self-care. I go to the gym, I train powerlifting and strong woman. And for me, that was my time away from everything. If I had a hard day at work, if something wasn't going the way I expected, I could go to the gym, I could get it out, and I felt better.
Okay, good. Thank you. A question now I have, let's see, let me find it. What opportunities do you have and take advantage of in terms of learning new skills to do what you do? What do you all do, or anyone want to share?
I can say something.
Jennifer?
Obviously, we all have CEUs depending on what licensing you're doing, but I really like to take CEU classes. This year's been weird because they're all online, but it's also quite convenient. But I like going in person because then you can network and meet other people. But a couple of years ago, there are opportunities out there. I took a class down at Texas Christian University. I had to do, I think, like 80 hours of online work, and then I had to go to Texas and stay for, was it a week? I think an entire week of intensive training, and it was trust-based relational intervention. It's a technique that they've come out with for children that have been in hard places, is what they would call it, trauma of any kind. But that was, allowing yourself that time to just go and just learn a new skill. Like, I've done this for a long time, but it's really nice to get that refreshed, keep your mind fresh. And, so I'm always looking for something that I can take. Sometimes it's about psychology and sometimes it's just about history. I like to take all kinds of weird classes, but there are lots of free things out there that you can take to increase your skill level and meet other professionals.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anyone else
Sure.
want to share what you do? Alyssa?
Again, we do need to have CEUs. It's built into your job if you have any type of license. There are so many things that you can get credentialed in after you get your degree. A lot of folks, and I just had a conversation with someone about this, they felt like they had to go back and take a college class in order to do other things. But you don't. There are art therapy classes or they're like CEUs that you can get, certifications. I recently completed a trauma certification through the Ference Institute out of Maryland. And it was different this year because it was online. But her level 2, you have to do in person. So that's going to be next spring, and we'll travel to Maryland to do that. And that was actually more intense than any graduate class I ever had. it was, I want to say 56 hours. It was every other week for a full day. But it was awesome training. And there are many opportunities. You can find courses in, equine therapy. I think I said art therapy. There are various techniques, EMDR, tapping, all kinds of things. But you can also just read. There are some awesome reading lists out there. A Google search can just provide so much. Things about trauma, about substance abuse. I read all the time. I also do, and I do audiobooks, so then I get to, maybe combine my exercise with listening to a book. I had several clients are dealing with food issues. So I just completed a book on intuitive eating. So now I know about intuitive eating because several of them are trying to practice that. And, a lot of times it's taking the lead with your client. If your client has some type of, direction they want to go, then you go and you seek out the resources to help that individual client.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anything else that anyone would want to?
For me, most of mine are counseling related. So I always start by looking at the ACA, the American Counseling Association. If you're a member, you get free continuing education every month on a variety of topics. But what's really nice about the ACA and other organizations is they have divisions within that main group. So if you have a particular interest, you can go to that division and you can get all sorts of journal articles, webinars, in-person trainings. So for me, I'm part of the ACA, but then I'm also part of the counselor educators and supervisors. So I do like the ACEs conference every year. There's also other things, like if you're interested in forensic counseling, there's the National Board of Forensic Examiners, and they do monthly webinars and trainings. I'm presenting for them next month. So find out what your areas of interest are. Literally go to the ACA or do a Google search, and you can typically find free trainings or people to connect with.
And as Hannah was saying, that goes for a variety of associations. For all of us, whether social work, counseling, whatever, going to your particular association can be very helpful. Continuing ed, all of us in the applied fields, we are required to, to pursue and, complete so much continuing ed. I'm dual certified, so I have school psych as well as counseling. And that can get overwhelming in terms of trying to, completing all of the hours that are required for both areas. But again, this is how we learn and keep abreast with the ongoing changes in information and the new stuff that we are learning. Okay, I have a question for you. One student was wanting to know, can any of you identify one particular a particularly memorable professional experience or anything that kind of guided you in a direction, or any kind of a memorable experience related to what you do? Anyone, anything that... That's one you have to kind
there are a lot. It's hard to choose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way.
For me, there were a few.
Okay.
No, sorry. For me, there were a few experiences that have really stood out. I always knew I wanted to work in corrections. But for me, I had some experiences very early on that solidified I was in the right path. So I always knew I wanted to do therapy. And when I finally got the job, I was a little bit hesitant. There's a lot to take on in a corrections field. And one experience that stood out, I had a guy I started working with, and he absolutely did not want to work with me. He came in, he sat down, he was like, I'm here because I have to be. I don't want to talk to you. And I was like, that's fine. Like, we'll hang out together. You sit here and let's see if we can make something work. And it ended up being that he was suicidal, just didn't want to interact with me because he was afraid I would find out. Things got really escalated. Officers had to come in. I got sprayed with OC. That was one of the times. And he was really angry with me. And I really thought that I had just messed up. I was in the wrong field. And the next day I went to see him and he was like, I was really angry with you yesterday. He said, but you saved my life. He said, I would have killed myself. And he said, I wasn't happy and I'm sorry I called you the things I did, but you saved my life. And for me, that was such a solidifying moment. It reminded me that I was making a difference and this was the right path for me.
Okay, good, thank you. Anyone else that you can think of something? Michael?
So this was actually my first one of my first jobs right out of my master's program. I was working at the Fairmont Clinic, the MVA Fairmont Clinic, starting out the homeless initiative there. I was actually doing street outreach in north central West Virginia and real close to home. And I met an individual, and that was actually a couple who was experiencing what we consider chronic homelessness, has varying disabling conditions, has an extensive history of experiencing homelessness, and statistically speaking and per acuity, we have a lot of studies that show that these types of individuals are more likely to die while experiencing homelessness. And I met this couple in a downtown area, and through quite a bit of rapport building, and it took me several weeks of working with this couple. They allowed me to sit beside them on, literally in one of our doorways. And I sat with them and I brought them lunch for a couple weeks from the local food pantry. Ultimately, I was one of the first providers that really made an attempt to work on establishing the rapport. The one individual ended up being a veteran. He found out within several weeks of me getting him into medical care, he had stage 4 cancer. And he was able to die, and it gives me goosebumps, in his rocking chair in his housing. It was the first time in a long time he had somewhere to call his own. And ironically enough, the week before during a home visit, he said, Michael, this is the first time I've had a chair that he could remember. And that was actually the place he passed away. What we do matters. And, we may not see it in every day, but it matters. It can't go unsaid. So, but we have to take care of ourselves too. That's my second shout out.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have something that they might want to share regarding that?
Well, yeah. So when I first started in the field, before I went to college, I worked at the Summit Center in their day program. And so I had a pretty normal childhood, didn't have a lot of experience with mental health issues or people from that population. And it was pretty eye-opening when I first started the field at some of the problems that these people experience. Michael mentioned how they're marginalized, how sometimes they're abandoned and just simply forgot about. After working with these groups of people through this facility for a while, you really start to feel like that there's some meaning to what you do. I mean, when these people look at you, when you come in and see them, and you're the only friend they have, you're the only person that has ever treated them nice or tried to help them, it really does give you a sense of satisfaction at the end of the day. So, we can spend our days selling used cars or insurance or whatever, but at the end of this career, you're going to be able to look back and say to yourself, at the very least, I made a difference. I mattered to somebody. And that's a really important motivator. And if you get that feeling when you're working with these people, you very well might be in the right place.
Okay, good. And anyone else on that? Anything? Jennifer?
I was just going to say, I mean, obviously, if you do this a long time, you have a lot of clients that come to your mind. But I just thought of, I had a client that she was a college student, and I was seeing her. Started off, it was for an eating disorder, but then obviously you get down into it, and there was some PTSD going on from some trauma and sexual abuse when she was younger, and then some depression, and then it went into alcoholism. She became an alcoholic. So we had a lot that we worked on with her, and you know, by the time I was done seeing her, she was doing so much better. I mean, it took a long time. Eating disorders are really hard, along with addiction issues. They kind of go hand in hand, but I ended up, I was in a restaurant actually during this pandemic. I was in a restaurant, and then she walks and she's eating a cheeseburger, and I was so proud of her. I didn't say anything. I mean, she said hi to me and spoke to me. If they speak to me, I'll speak to them, obviously. But you know, she's doing well, and she had her baby with her. She's got a baby now. She's happy. And sometimes it's just like things like that just kind of make you, you know, realize, wow, you know, it was worth all the really difficult work. And I was very proud of the fact that the choices that she made that helped her to get where she was. And so it's just good when you get that good feeling when you know, okay, I made a difference in this person's life. And
Sure. Anyone else on that? Michelle?
So I agree with Jennifer. After you've done it for so long, there are so many, like you could pick so many different stories of people you've interacted with over the years. But two come to mind for me. And one we have happened more often than what you would hope. We had, and this is when we were in our old facility, we've moved to a new facility a couple of years ago. We had a young child come in, and they were moved into the shelter with his mom. And he looked at us and he's like, this is the best place that I've ever been. Like, I feel so great here. And it just kind of struck me like, wow, a shelter full of other people who are strangers to you, basically, other clients and the staff. And this is the best place that you've ever been, that you've ever felt that you've been the safest in. So that was really, and I'd been, working at Hope for quite some time at that point, but just to hear that every once in a while just kind of reminds you that, this is what people are dealing with. And then the other was, I've done a few different things throughout my time at Hope, but we were at a public event, at a community education event, and I think we had a speaker or something, or somebody that was doing a little presentation for us, and she'd been a survivor, and we have a lot of survivors who pass through our doors, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "I'm sorry." I said, did I work with you? Was I, one of your case managers, your advocate? And she said, "Yeah." She said, "You weren't really directly." She goes, "But one day in the hallway, you saw me and I was having a particularly bad day." And she goes, "I don't even know if you knew I was having a really bad day." She said, "And you looked at me and you said, you know what, it's going to be okay. And nobody deserves this and you don't deserve it. And it's going to be okay." And she said, that stuck with me for all of these years. It'd been like 6 years since I had seen her and had said this to her. And she said, "You really just said it in passing." But she said, "I just needed to hear that in that moment." And she said, "And you said it to me." And she said, "And that's what helped me get through to come out on the other side." And I tried my best to rack my brain to figure out, when it was and how it happened and who she was. But I never really could remember. She's like, "But I knew it was you." She said, "As soon as I saw you, I knew it was you." So, those are the moments that you want your clients and your survivors to experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's really interesting by the nature of being therapeutic, and so many, we do that in social service, and I think part of what we do, we're there to assist in that transformation process for the people to whom we come in contact. So one student kind of asked the question, have you felt transformed by having the opportunity to assist in transforming others? Any comments on that? Have you felt some of that? Just those peak moments, like in Maslow, we talk about, you know, those peak moments. Have you felt it? Have you felt that in your work? And it sounds like you have, but anyone want to comment further on that? Just being transformed by having the opportunity to help others.
I'll go.
Melissa?
I think when you hear from them that, wow, that this really helped me. Like you know, you're in a therapy session, and you know, a lot of times it's not gonna look like the videos you watch in class. It's going to be messy. It's not going to follow, you know, I'll go in thinking I have, oh, this is what we're going to probably talk about today, and I'll have a plan. And if something has happened, it's shot out the window. But when you can roll with it, and, you know, especially when you weren't expecting, you know, the issue to come up, you can roll with it. And then in the end, they were like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Or, oh, it's so clear to me now. When you hear those things, that's really transformative. You know, and kind of back to the last question, you know, I worked at Head Start in the late 90s. Left in 2001. And what would be so awesome was when I would see those little Head Start kids years later when I was at Fairmont State and they're college students. You know, that's like, oh wow, you know, they were a Head Start student and now they're a college student, and some of them are even in the field now. And that just kind of it's just transformative when you get that good positive feedback from them, when they actually say, oh, I get it.
Any other comments regarding that? Anything?
I think when you start a job in general, you know, it's very natural when you first start a career to be very nervous, very unsure of yourself, not have a lot of self-confidence in what you're doing. But if you really challenge yourself and step out of your comfort zone, you're really going to surprise yourself with what you're able to do, what you're able to comprehend. And I think that develops you as a professional, develops you as a person, really expands what you're willing to attempt and the confidence you have in yourself. So I think just pursuing a career, sticking to it, challenging yourself, can be transformative in and of itself.
I know Alyssa kind of suggested, you know, some skills or personal attributes that might be kind of advantageous for a therapist, for instance. And you know, people were one question in terms of what personal skills do you think are kind of necessary for the specific job that you do. And remember, the people in here, we have administrators, we also have therapeutic individuals. In terms of, and we'll look at both of those because they're, again, different skill sets. But for therapists, what are some personal attributes that you would say kind of necessary or advantageous to have to really be successful in as a therapist or a counselor, you know, therapeutic social worker?
I would say I would hope that you would be empathetic and warm with clients. You know, try to be understanding. You've really got to listen. Like, you've got to be a really good listener and pay attention to detail, because when you're doing therapy, you're actively thinking the entire time, you know, so you're constantly, when they're saying something, you're listening to what they're saying, but you're thinking, you know, what's the motivation behind that? Is there a core belief behind that I need to challenge, you know, and then you're planning your next thought that goes along with that. I mean, it's active. It's an active hour. Like, I don't know about the rest of you all, but I'm exhausted when I do one therapy session after another all day because I'm like, I had to think all day, like really hard. So, but I think, you know, just having that really good listening skills and that empathy, and, you know, I think is important.
Yeah, Good. Anyone else? Anything?
You have to be, and this is one of the things I love about being a therapist. Being a good therapist especially when you're doing outpatient and there is a choice. Inpatient, there's not a choice. You may be it for your, shift or whatever, but and the patients are there, they're either there voluntarily or they're committed. So there's not a whole lot of choice. But outpatient, there are a lot of therapists out there, and fit is incredibly important. And it doesn't mean anybody's a bad therapist or a good therapist. It's just that not everybody fits with everyone else, like any relationship. Being authentic, you must be authentic so that that fit can actually happen. You also have to be very transparent, especially dealing with anyone with trauma. There's no secrets. I do a lot of psychoeducation with my clients so that they know exactly where I'm coming from. There has to be zero manipulation, because that's what perpetrators do, is they use manipulation, and especially with trauma, that's incredibly triggering. So you have to be authentic, you have to be transparent, you have to be open to a wide variety of types of people. Your clients are not always going to look like you. They're not always going to come from the same background. And you may think that a client is like you, similar in background, but then when they start bringing out different things, I always felt like I needed to have healthy exposure to a lot of different things so that I wouldn't be shocked when someone told me something. So being more just aware of different things that people have been through and having an open mind is incredibly important.
Okay. Okay, Alyssa, thank you. Anyone else want to share a personal, Hannah?
Yeah, so for me, I think all of those were really great points. Definitely being authentic or genuine. I find that clients pick up very quickly when you're not being yourself, and they'll call you on it, or they just won't open up. So make sure you're spending time figuring out who you are along this process and in this journey, and recognize when you're not being authentic to who you are, and try to figure out how to change that. For me, being authentic, part of it is, I'm very clearly tattooed, and it fits really well with the guys I work with. It's part of my identity. And we talk about that, they tell me a lot through their tattoos because they see me and they see I'm comfortable with it. So I hear a lot of their stories about like what gangs they're in or why they got these particular tattoos in prisons, because they felt comfortable to open up to me. I think the other big thing is being really curious. I've always been a very inquisitive kind of person, and I think a lot of counseling is being curious about who that person is, trying to understand their story, their narrative, and how it fits into their current functioning.
Okay. All right, thank you. Along with that, looking at, and again, understanding also in being therapeutic and working as social workers, counselors, along with those skills and the need to be very flexible, because again, as Alyssa was saying, you may expect to be following, you're remembering where your client was the week before, and you can go into your next session and life changes and things happen. And you have to be prepared mentally to kind of move in different directions in what you do. But along with that, for therapists, we have also the need to be organized and the need to, to address paperwork and to handle, things that sometimes therapists, we find that sometimes therapists really have to struggle to want to focus on those particular skill sets. David and Michelle, as administrators, can you talk about some of the other skill sets that are, first of all, very important for you, and some of the same skills that we also need to take on as clinicians, therapists? Either way, David?
All right. Obviously, college is an opportunity to refine certain skill sets, get better at certain things we do. And I think one overlooked aspect of this particular field is just the sheer volume of writing involved in what we do. I think so many people are taken back and absolutely shocked when they see the amount of documentation, the amount of paperwork, the pressures from people like me in quality assurance, trying to get you to do things the way the state payers and the federal payers want you to do. So getting really adept at your writing skills and being able to write with detail and be able to summarize well, this is going to be a huge advantage when you get into this field. Because I mean, honestly, when I was a clinician, I spent about as much time engaging with the writing process than I did engaging with the clients. And sometimes people don't think this is an important skill. And again, they're really taken off guard when they see how much of it is involved in this particular field. And that, I mean, that really goes with any higher level profession. They expect you to be able to do things like write proficiently, be able to read for comprehension, be able to problem solve and critically think. And again, you guys all have this opportunity through your undergrad experience to refine these skills and get better at them. And the better you are at these core soft skills that are transferable to any environment, the more opportunities you're going to have and the more likely you're going to be successful, whatever you choose to do.
Sure. Michelle, would you add anything that you might add?
Yes, I think one thing that I see a great need for is problem solving skills and applying those to real world experiences. Often our clients come to us with a variety of problems. Yes, we provide services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, but their problems are so much deeper than that. And being able to apply problem solving skills to those real world problems and figuring out how to like prioritize what needs to be done first for that person and with that person, and just being able to kind of make a roadmap for them to get to where their ultimate end goal is. I think so often I'll see advocates that just kind of have trouble seeing the bigger picture of where they need to be at the end and how to get there. And I think that that's a skill, a problem solving skill that is something that's really, really important.
Okay. I have just a couple more questions and then we'll move to some of the chat, looking at chat. One question, again, and the assumption, we can certainly make this assumption that, before last year, it's been a year, I mean, but pre-pandemic, we were providing services differently. Things changed, okay? Can you just kind of briefly address what has changed since before the pandemic? And are there certain aspects that you believe will continue, that where service delivery there's going to be, to some extent, either more of a long-term change or maybe a permanent change in how you guys are delivering services? Anyone want to handle that?
I'll go. So I actually started my current position during the pandemic. So it's a little bit different, but Shannon, the other therapist that I work for, we were in person, and prior to this, my therapy experience was inpatient, and of course that's in person. And I was very critical of telehealth. However, now that I've been doing it, we have adapted our styles. We're 100% telehealth, and we will be until the pandemic is clearly over with. But it has opened up areas of this state that could not get services. I have clients as far away as Huntington. I see people, because maybe due to their position in their community,
they can't find a therapist that they don't have a prior relationship with. I have clients that are in areas where there are no therapists and they would be driving, 45 minutes to get to one anyway. I also have local clients who can get away for the hour for therapy from their job, but they don't have time for travel time. So I will probably do a hybrid. I have, some folks with their trauma is a little bit more severe. So we will move to it in person. Also going to start doing groups. They will likely be in person. But all that will happen once the pandemic is over. But continuing to do telehealth just so those people can have access. And it's been a criticism. Access to services has been an issue in West Virginia forever. Not just lack of providers, but also lack of transportation. So, with telehealth, then we just have to deal with lack of broadband access. So.
Okay. All right. Anyone else want to add on that? David?
I was just saying, from my particular job, I get to review hundreds of cases every month in terms of the audits that we do, keeping an eye on different things. I'm seeing a lot of trends, since the pandemic started. And one thing that I can say with a lot of confidence is this pandemic's been hard on people. The isolation, the separation from their families, the level of anxiety, the substance abuse problems. I mean, we see a lot of these problems currently going absolutely through the roof. And it really is tough for providers because the limitations in face-to-face contact, the limitations in being able to put eyes on people, it really does have some limiting effects in terms of how well we're able to treat these clients and how quickly we're able to respond to their needs. So it does appear that when this pandemic is over, that there's going to be even a bigger need than there currently is to get people back to normal through this time. So that's one of the things that I've noticed from the things that I've seen.
Okay, from anyone else? And Jennifer? Oh, your audio.
Okay, I was just going to say quickly, a few years ago, I thought about trying to do online therapy because it was finally approved with insurances. So I let all my clients know that I had, and then I tried to do like online, like other ways. And everybody that called me was like, well, could I just not come in your office and see you? So I was like, okay, fine. So it just didn't go anywhere. And I thought to myself, this is going to feel awkward when the pandemic happened and we started, okay, let's do online therapies. At first it was a little awkward because let's face it, I'm old. I don't FaceTime people. I didn't before. But, I really, really like doing it online. And Alyssa's right. It's very convenient for clients that don't have rides. I have some clients with agoraphobia, which unfortunately we've gone backwards because of this pandemic. It's very frustrating, but I can still see them, they can make it out. They can see me online. But therapy-wise, or evaluations, as clinical psychologist, I think I'm the only one probably doing psychological testing. Some testing we can do online, and it's awesome. A lot of them came out with ways to do the testing online. I did some of that during the pandemic. But then there are some things you just can't do online. Like I really don't like the IQ test online. I know they have it. You're allowed to do it. I don't like it. I don't think that with kids especially, you're going to get good results. That's just my personal opinion on that. It's hard to get good results with kids in person. And my therapies with kids, when I do them online, they're 30 minutes because they can't go any longer than that, like 30 minutes, that's it, they're done. So, so some things I think you will be a mesh at the end, but right now I'm doing all my evals in person because that's certain things have to be done that way. I've been vaccinated. I've been in the office since like June. So I see clients 4 days a week in office and I do all my therapies in one day on Fridays. So, and I anticipate that that's going to continue because it is incredibly convenient. And there are some really good ways for people that can't, don't have transportation or what have you.
Okay. Anything, Michelle?
So for us, operating a shelter facility during the pandemic, we were obviously deemed an essential service and had to remain operational 24/7 throughout the entire time. So for us, we had to alter shifts and do some different things. But it really, we have a rapid rehousing program as part of one of our services that we provide. And we had to get really creative how we could continue to provide that service during this time. So we figured out technology and ways to do virtual visits with landlords and do electronic signing of documents we needed for leases and landlord tenant agreements and all sorts of things. And that transformed over to working with our victims just on an everyday basis. And we have found that we have some who enjoy more of the electronic means of communicating with us. And I feel like some of them, we may not have reached the level we have reached with them had it not been for the pandemic and us having to find different ways for them. So I think as an agency that had traditionally always done, you come to us in our setting because of safety reasons and whatnot. I think that we've always talked about, thrown around recently, the mobile advocacy, like meeting people where they are. And for us, the pandemic brought that to our attention and brought that to the forefront even more. So I feel like we have developed a good like mobile advocacy system with our clients. And honestly, I don't think that'll be something that will go away after we're able to get back into our offices normally and be together as a group. And also our counseling services that we provide. So we provide free counseling services by master's level folks, and they had to adapt ways. So we were even able to do support groups virtually during this time and do individual sessions during this time virtually. And I think that we have found that for some people, that will be something that we will be continuing to offer even afterwards.
I just want to mention, oh, I'm sorry. Did someone want to say something? Someone else? I just want to mention that because I also, as well as being a professor, that, I have a practice, and I know I've had many of you, most of you in class, that I would be the last person to advocate, telehealth. You know me in that. And like Alyssa, I have to say, I'm having to, as we say sometimes in West Virginia, I have to eat my words because I am able to connect with individuals who are in areas, throughout, but I mean that in areas where driving has been very difficult, or just in situations out of convenience where this has certainly worked. I will continue to provide hybrid services. I will, because of this. I do want to mention, and this was brought up by the child individuals last night, and because I do child work with children, we have to be very difficult with tele. I know it is working because we've needed to do that in the pandemic, but depending on ages with the little ones, because we pick up so much non-verbally, and again, their verbal skills, they are only beginning to, even with older small children, it's more challenging for us to really do successful work with little ones, and so we have to be careful with that. But no, I agree. What I'd like to do right now, I believe we probably have a number of questions in the chat. Dr. Slota, would you like to kind of come on and share some of those with us?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, and the first question I'm gonna actually ask you is one that I came up with as I was listening. And so yesterday, the students asked the child people, why did you pick children? And what are the benefits of working with children? So my question to you, especially for those of you who have worked with both, is why did you pick adults? And what are the benefits of working with adults? Anybody?
I'll go. So I did work with kids for a period of time. what I found is it takes a really specific personality to work with kids and be patient enough to work with kids. And that was not my personality. I felt just very tired and very drained after working with kids. And the other difficulty I have with kids is that a lot of it is not issues I had with the kids. It was that you were also working with the parents in many senses. A lot of child behaviors were a result of parenting. So for me, I found that I prefer adults. My temperament is more suited towards adults. But I'm really thankful for people who like working with kids and also working with their parents.
Anybody else?
I mean, I can just say I work with both parents and is it on? Oh, okay. I work with both children and adults, so I could have been, I guess, on either panel, but there's good things about both of them. I like working with adults because you can just, you know, reason with them a lot easier, and they can learn things a lot quicker. But I like working with kids too, because kids are fun and you get to play and kind of remind yourself what it's like to have fun and play and teach them things that way. And you're right, you work a lot with the parents. Like I usually split up my time and I spend a lot of time teaching with parents. And, you know, so I kind of look at them as I'm doing both of them when I see a child.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question was for Alyssa specifically. There she is. Okay. And it was, what are some of the major differences you experienced in your time working in social work and clinical therapy? The student who asks is trying to decide what path to take.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part of that.
Okay, I'll repeat it all. What are some of the major differences you experienced in your time working in social work and in clinical therapy? The student who asks is trying to decide which path to take in grad school.
Okay, I'm not really sure how to answer that. I mean, I chose social work, you know, as my master's just because of the flexibility. You can work with everyone from an individual to an entire government. You know, it's the full span from micro to macro. And I like that flexibility. Anyone who knows me, and I think the last time we did this, it was a major comment that I made. I average about 5 years at each job. Now with therapy, I'm putting much more of an investment into this and will probably stay much longer, but I like to change it up. I am a person that gets bored frequently, and that's not a slam at the clients or anything, but I like to mix it up. So, you know, social work, I will say my social work background complements what I do in therapy, because just as, and I can't remember who said it about the problem solving, that's the major part of social work, is using that generalist model to problem solve. So I can flip in session from looking at, you know, what happened, you know, in somebody's past that might be influencing them now, to helping them deal with an acute issue right now, say with transportation, or you know, any issue that they may have. We can step back and look at each step and decide, okay, how are we going to attack this issue to solve the problem? So it gives a lot of flexibility, and the two fields complement one another quite a bit. I hope that answers the question. I know it was something, you know, the students trying to pick which field. And the beauty of it is you can change gears. You can change gears midstream and you can go in another direction. Once you have that degree, it may involve some extra training and things, but you can switch gears rather easily in this field.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else to add to that? Okay, so then we've got
Dr. Slota, I just want to mention, and we had the alumni showcase a number of years ago, and I remember Michael White making a comment during that time, and I don't remember if he remembers this, but it was very, he said it quite well. In social work gives you breadth. And as Alyssa was saying, there's a marketability in so many areas that you might want to go into. Okay, with that. With counseling, what you get probably more therapeutic depth. Okay, you get depth in terms of for instance, the therapeutic process. Now, again, the diversity would lie in different populations that you may specialize and work with and all of that. But their focus is going to be very much on that therapeutic process. It might be group process, it might be individual process, special needs in relation to different populations. But social work gives you an incredible amount of breadth in terms of areas that you can focus the work that you do, and the different kinds of work in terms of that. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so the next two are kind of broad and for everybody. Okay, so the first question is from a poli-sci major, because we also offered extra credit in 1101. So some of the audience isn't actually psych majors or isn't psych majors yet, because maybe you guys convinced them to switch major. But anyway, so the student says, I am a poli-sci major, so I know very little about psychology. But if there's time, I would like to know more about why the panelists decided to study psychology / why did you choose your career path? So think back to when you were in college. Why did you pick psych as a major, and why did you pick the career you picked, or the job path or the schooling you picked when you, yes, Michael?
So I will just encourage anyone who is considering like their options. Don't feel that you have to put yourself in a corner. If you need a time to take a breath to make that decision, do that. No one can force you to make that faster than you need to make that decision. On another hand, I would really encourage everyone to really consider moments, and you might have to reflect on this and meditate on this, and I encourage meditation a lot. It has brought me down about 5 folds. I think Alyssa and Dr. Ann could agree with that. Really think about the moments in your life that you were the happiest. What was surrounding those moments? Was it helping someone else? Was it spending time with a certain family member, a friend, doing something specific? And see if you can find those moments in your day to day. And if you still find the same joy from then to now, that may be a consideration for a future employment opportunity for you.
Thank you. And David, did you want to say something too?
Sure. When I first started college, it was not a psychology major. It's actually an English major. I was at for my first semester and a half. And then I took Psych 101 with Dr. Ann. And honestly, psychology is cool. I mean, it's really interesting. I find the theories fascinating. It's so applicable to so many different areas of life. I mean, once I got into that class and I took another one and took another one, I mean, honestly, I kind of came addicted to the theories and the ideas, and really getting that undergrad degree and really spurring my interest in psychology has given me such a great understanding of so many different environments, so many different life situations. And it's just generally invaluable in everything that I do. So that was really the catalyst that got me going in that direction. I guess I could thank Dr. Ann for that. It was a really eye-opening experience, and really did open my eyes to a whole new field that did a lot to really explain how everything works all around us.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Sure, I'll go. For me, I'll be really honest because I think it's important. For me, my interest in psychology and counseling came from a lot of my experiences growing up. I didn't have a lot of stability. I experienced a lot of trauma. And because of that, I developed this desire to help, to give back, to be the person I needed. And while that's really beautiful, I encourage you, if that is you, please make sure that you are healing yourself before you dive into the field. For me, that meant I went and got my own counseling. I saw a therapist. I worked through a lot of things so I could be healthy for my clients. So this is something I've seen with a lot of my counseling students. It's a really common theme. So please, if you're in the field, take care of yourself first.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I did not start out as a psychology major either. Like I said, I changed jobs about every 5 years. I changed majors about 3 times. I started out as a biology major and realized I had no desire whatsoever to go to medical school and didn't know what else to do with it. Sorry about the dog. And then I just kind of floated to I considered business for a while. But I had some really good psych electives, and it was just very interesting. And I liked the blend of the industrial psych gave me all the psych classes, but then also some classes that really looked at psychology applied to work. And I just found that incredibly interesting. I predate Anne in the at Fairmont State, but I had Dr. Joe Shaver was one of my main mentors in that program. And I believe, yeah, he was actually my advisor. So it really helped guide me and actually steered me towards the Industrial and Labor Relations Masters at WVU, which is a business. It's out of the school business. So that's how I came about. And, and I had plans that I was going to work for some big company. I was maybe going to work for the EEOC, something like that, something related to industry. And I just kept getting drawn back to nonprofits and loving working in nonprofits. And then it was like, oh, I need to go back and get an MSW now. So that's kind of my story and how I decided on, where I wanted to go. And something I really want to point out, it's never too late to change directions. I think it was Matresa. Did I say that right? Okay. You said everybody's on their own schedule. That's how higher ed is. I mean, you are on your own schedule. It's not, you don't have to finish with your class. You can leave, you can come back later. You can, at any point, I had classes with people in their 60s. So you can always change direction. You can always go back. And I also need to also reinforce that if you're going to work in this field, you need to, at some point, be in therapy. If for no other reason, just so you know what it's like to be on the other side of that chair.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, you got it right, Alyssa. So I was just going to touch kind of a conclusive statement with agreeing with what Michael said and what Alyssa said. But also, like she said, I used to be I had a hard time with my story and was embarrassed or, aggravated, and my student loan debt was ridiculously high with no degree to show for it at some point. And so the main thing I want to encourage, especially you guys as students, like she said, you can, take a break, you can go straight through. Sometimes if you change your course of path or you think it's something that society is going to frown on because you have to go to high school, go to college for 4 years, get this degree, get this master's, do this, you can be on your own clock. And I had a professor at Fairmont State, I forget which one it was, but it has stuck with me for years in saying that, for example, I worked as a CNA in a nursing home in my early college years. Geriatrics was something that I decided that I didn't hate it or dislike it, but I was like, this isn't for me. Then working as a daycare teacher, I was like, all right, I feel like I'm pretty good at this. And now doing the job that I do now, I have found my zone, my entry level zone of, yes, like I'm not a crazy, well, I'm a little bit, you have to be a little bit crazy to be in this field, because I do have my own therapist as well. So it's fine, Alyssa, you do need a therapist sometimes. But conclusively to say what my professor once said is sometimes you have to work through some things that you don't want to do to ultimately do some things that you do want to do.
Thank you. And Michelle, were you going to say something?
I'm a lot like everyone else. I started out as a math major. I was supposed to be a high school math teacher, a middle school, high school math teacher is what I was supposed to be. I was destined to be. So I was sitting in like some, I don't know, I think it was like Calculus 3 class or something at Fairmont State. And people had been up doing their homework assignment for hours the night before, like they'd all been up until 3 o'clock. And I just didn't have the motivation to do that. I love math, I love numbers, but I'm like, I don't want to stay up until 3 a.m. to do math problems. And so I remember telling my advisor that I wanted to change because I too had taken like a sociology or psychology like elective course, and it intrigued me. Like I'm like, wow, this is great. This is stuff that I want to know about. I will stay up until 3 a.m. to do that homework. And so she was really, really upset with me when I told her I wanted to switch. And that was really hard for me because I kind of had that pleasing personality. Like I want to make people happy. So here I was turning my back to what my parents thought I should and would be. And now my advisor was upset with me because I was changing, I wanted to change majors. And she got really upset with me for that. But I'm like, okay, I am an adult. I have to do this work for the rest of my life. What do I want to do? And I'm like, I'm just going to do it and go for it. So I also encourage students to, if you're having hesitations about, where you thought you were going in that direction, whatever that direction might be, take a minute and like stop and think about it. And if you feel like, this is something you want to do and you want to pursue it more, or, something else is calling you, take that minute because it could make the difference. My previous executive director, I tell her that she knew what my previous major was, and she used to always tease me and say, Michelle, you never would have been able to just sit and work with, like numbers and crunch numbers all day long. She's like, you're too much of a people person for that. So she was right. She was totally right. So I just encourage people to, really like take a minute, and if you're feeling some way, really try to experience that and figure out what that is.
Thank you. Anybody else? And I should say that I was an education major as an undergrad and took a year to realize I should not be in a classroom with small children. And then I went to grad school, and the only psych classes I had were 1101 and stats. And I was starting in a PhD program in psych. And it was a big learning curve. It was a very big learning curve. But anyway, okay, that kind of leads me into the next question, which is from one of the seniors. And how did you decide which graduate school was best for you? Michael?
Guys, what we may want to do on that, since that's geared for tomorrow evening, if you have more
Oh,
questions.
that's true too.
Yeah, you may want to do that if we have more questions.
The only other set of questions was all for Hannah, because everybody wants to know about forensic psych. So if we want, I think we still have enough time. It's only 6:30. So can we get a short set of answers about grad school for today, just in case the students aren't coming back tomorrow? And I hope they all are. But so Michael, how did you decide?
So I think that one of the considerations are, taking into account what is on your plate in regards to, is that family? Is that that you're currently going to have to work full time while you're in school? Is it you have children? Do you have parents you take care of? Look at what's on your plate and really be honest and vulnerable about what does that look like in regards to the journey you're going to make in grad school and post-grad potentially. Don't set yourself up into situations where you feel like you have to go to a certain school or a certain area to get the education. Almost all of the universities that you'll be looking for, be just online, just make sure online universities are accredited, but almost all of the ones that you will likely go to in person are accredited. Ensuring they're accredited, you are going to leave with the exact same degree as someone who goes to Harvard Law School, as anyone else. The degree is the degree. And let's help you pass the exam after the fact. So just be vulnerable, but also look at what's on your plate. Don't set yourself up for somebody else's reality for you. Focus on your own.
Thank you. Okay, so Hannah, you're up. Everybody wants to know about forensic psych and how did you get there and how does one get a job in that and what schooling should one have and anything else you want to tell us.
Okay, cool. You might have to remind me of some of those, but I'll try my best.
Okay.
So for me, like I said, even in my undergrad, like when I had to do, is Dr. Vorbal still there?
He teaches online as an adjunct now. He retired.
Okay. Well, when I had to do like my final course with Dr. Vorbal, I remember doing research on incarcerated populations. And I was hooked. Like I always had an interest. I took some of the criminal justice courses and I fell in love with this population. And part of it was I was really interested in trauma and how trauma impacts adult functioning. And there is a ton of unresolved trauma in the prison system. So if trauma is your thing, your interest, maybe consider forensics. For me, I got into the position by just being really diligent and looking at job postings frequently. So to work for the DCR, which is the state level facilities, to do counseling, you need to have your master's and you need to be licensed. So for me, my master's is in clinical mental health counseling. That could also be a master's in psych. It could also be a master's in social work. You just need to make sure you have that degree and you're licensed or you're provisionally licensed. So that just means you would have to have a supervisor for a couple years watching over you, making sure you're doing everything. It's typically when you're right outside of your master's program, which is great. For me, I didn't have to do any specialized or extra training outside of my master's program. A lot of it was just me taking a personal interest. So when I went to the interview, I said, here's my experience. This is what I do. But also this is what I've read up on. I've been studying forensics. I've been reading books. I've been going to webinars. So I have an understanding of the profession. And I think that really kind of elevated me above everybody else. What were the other questions? I feel like I'm missing something.
That was kind of how did you get there? When did you get interested? How did you get there? And I think you had already told us about what you liked. I'll say to chat, hey, what else did you want to know from Dr. Bland?
Perfect.
And give us a minute and hopefully they'll type. It's not a class, so they might actually talk.
I just real quickly, I don't mean to interject, but
no, that's fine.
I have to leave because I have to go somewhere. So
okay.
I want to just like leave.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. So sorry. Thanks.
No problem. Oh, and David is saying to Dr. Bland, do you know about federal requirements for working in the federal system?
I do. To go to the feds, first off, that is a super duper lengthy process. So don't expect to get that straight out of your master's. Do not. Just, it's like a year-long process just to do background checks. Like they talk to everybody and your mother and your cousin 3 times removed. So expect that to be a long process. But in order to do clinical work, you do have to be a psychologist for the feds. So I cannot do work at the federal level. So if that is your ultimate career goal and you know that's what you want, go into a psychology program.
Okay, thank you. So what was your first day like?
It was sink or swim. And in the best of ways. My supervisor, I'm really fortunate. She's really wonderful. But we were in a situation where both the prisons actually had gone without a therapist for many, many, many months, almost a year. So I had a wait list at both facilities. It was a really quick, here's how you use our system to track your documentation. I did like one mental health assessment, which is the assessment that we do anytime someone enters into our facility from the jails. And then it was like, here's your list, have fun. If you need help or you're being shanked, radio someone, will come help you. So it was a trip, but it was really fun because I really do think for me personally, I am a sink or swim kind of person. And if you throw me in and you tell me to do it, like I just go, I make my way. So for me, it was really fun. Like my first day, I ended up seeing like 4 clients who had all sorts of different issues. One guy I'm still working with years later, he has like complex trauma. I had one guy who had an eating disorder and then one with like intermittent explosive. And I think I had just like a generalized anxiety and depression thrown in just for fun. But that's like a normal day for me now. So it was a really interesting first experience.
Yeah. So everybody else, what were your first days like at one of your jobs, whether it's your current job or some other job? What's the first day like? Yeah, David.
Yeah, well, when I first became a case manager within my first week, I had some pretty interesting experiences that really made me question whether or not I wanted to be in the field. The first experience I had was my first encounter with someone with multiple personalities. And I was not familiarized with that. I had not been in contact with someone who could cycle back and forth to be basically different people at different times. That kind of freaked me out quite a bit. It took me about a week to be able to process what I just went through. So that was in my second week, I do believe. In my third week, I had the one and only time I've seen a kid, at least in our facility, who was diagnosed as schizophrenia at the age of 9. The kid was just having just these bizarre delusions and hallucinations. He was leaving the house. He was engaging in violent behavior. It was a really tough conversation to have with the parents to really kind of give them a pretty grim prognosis when someone starts to develop symptoms at that early of an age. And again, it was pretty heartbreaking. And in my by the end of my first month, the last experience, which was probably the toughest thing I've had in my professional career, we had a family of 4 kids. And all of the kids were diagnosed with ADHD. All of the kids were on stimulant medication. Well, the mother took all the children's stimulant medication. She overdosed and died. And the children found her the next morning. and she was their only caregiver. And that was about a 3-week process of being able to help those kids get through there, find them placement, everything else. And that was quite a bit to be put on your plate in your first month of work. And so it really did have me questioning whether or not I was in the right place. But, you know, at the end of the day, these are the types of situations that you'll come across sometimes in this field. And it really helps you understand whether or not it's a good fit or not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody else?
I just wanted to say for you people after, you know, hearing David's kind of first day experience and all that, again, different agencies, again, do things differently and all of that. And understand too, your agencies are required to provide supervision and, you know, training and all of that. And I'm sure David's in his situation that occurred. Any new skill experience, you're going to feel overwhelmed. But again, typically we are provided with support and you know, you've got your immediate supervisor, and we always recommend when you are feeling overwhelmed or you have a question, it's okay to say to someone, I really don't know what I'm doing, or I'm really lost here. It's very important to kind of put away that feeling of needing to be perfect and to be able to go to that individual and say, look, I need help. That's what it's all about. That's how we learn.
And I definitely had that support. It wasn't just me.
Yeah, I know you did.
Support from therapists, clinical supervisors, psychologists. There was a lot of people involved, but as the case manager, I was the center point and the contact point to get everything coordinated, everything happening. So yeah, I mean, there is training, there is support. So I didn't mean to come across as throwing you in a hellhole and you just got to figure your way out. There is assistance available, and you're not out there by yourself.
Yeah. Michelle?
Yes, I want to follow up with what Dr. Ann said. You know, now being in a supervisory role, and we often take advocates that have just, you know, recently, we do a lot of internships here, and then we also do advocates that have recently graduated, and we hire them. And honestly, I always tell, especially young people, please ask questions. If you're not asking questions, I'm more worried about you than if you are in my office like every 5 minutes. Because if you're not in my office every 5 minutes, then that means you're trying to probably navigate some waters that you may not be ready to navigate. And I would rather help you along the way and teach you our system than to have you a year down the road, you know, fall to pieces because you didn't come and ask for that support. So I always encourage questions. Like, please ask me whatever you need to ask, because that's the only way that you're gonna be successful.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Oh, go ahead, Matrisa.
I just wanted to share something really quickly, because I've been like I have a sense of humor, you know, which I think is super important, by the way, in our field. I work with children and adults, so I have a plethora of jokes up my sleeve for my kids and my adults, whether it's to take stress off of my foster parents' hands or to build rapport with a child. I'd like to think that my personality now lies somewhere between a 75-year-old and a 6-year-old. Tired has become part of my personality, I think, at this point. But what I will say is I've been in this job for 8 months, and some days I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm assessing this pretty well. Like, I have a business card and I feel like a professional. Other days I'm hit with a situation or a scenario with a case or a child or a family, and I don't even know what like Michelle said, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea. And there's not even a manual to look this up in. So I don't even know if I could Google it, to be honest. So I just wanted to say that. So I'm sure in the psych field, you guys will run across that, you know, and I'm sure even Dr. Ann, every so often in a blue moon, probably comes across something that makes her scratch her head. So speaking of sense of humor, I have no one else to share these with, my psychology bits of humor. So I wanted to share this with you guys. I have a little joke, but it's another thing that I learned the first week of my job. And it's how long does it take a social worker, AKA psychologist, therapist, case manager, caseworker, to change a light bulb? It takes 10 seconds to change the light bulb, but then it takes 2 hours to write the case notes and assessment justifying the need for intervention and change. I just wanted to share that. So AKA what I'm trying to tell you guys is work your wrists out, man, because it's going to be quite a bit of documentation and paperwork.
We could, if this is, because we are really working up toward the end of the forum this evening. Before we go, any just very brief words of wisdom that you would like to give our students in the audience right now who will be graduating at some point, and many of them moving on into social service? Any just words of wisdom, advice? Melissa?
Once you get out there, we've spoken about, different degrees, different forms of licensure. My big advice is to not be complacent, because you will have there are a lot of job opportunities where you may not need a license. Especially if you're working under a psychiatrist, inpatient, you may not need a license. Sometimes you may be in a job where you absolutely love it. You don't need a license at all, or maybe, the lower level license is sufficient. Don't be complacent. Go for the higher level license if you can. Also maintain your training and just be prepared, because in many of our areas, and this goes across the board from the small nonprofit to the big for-profit hospital, positions can go away. The hospital where I used to work, it closed down and was taken over by WVU Hospital. And I had moved on by then, but I'm just glad that I did, pursue all the opportunities after graduation so that I would have that flexibility and really a greater degree of job security. So that's my thing, is don't be complacent when it comes to, licensure. If it's available to you, go for it.
Thank you. Michael, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so I just want to, I'm a quote guy. I use quotes a lot. So Brene Brown is really one of my all-time favorites. The two quotes that really come out and stand out is, what we know matters, but who we are matters more. So my words of wisdom would be, don't get so overwhelmed of the things I don't know. Be true to yourself, be a decent human being, and be kind, and you really will do great in the field. And have boundaries. I'm adding that on. And have boundaries, good boundaries. And then the second one is, imperfections are not inadequacies. They are reminders that we're all in this together. So also, when you do trip, because we all trip, I tripped today, literally up the stairs, and also with a veteran I was working with today, just get back up and just acknowledge that we're all humans. We're doing the best we can. The last year and a half, going on a year and a half now, has been hell for a lot of us, and for the individuals we work with. So, just give yourself some grace. You guys are going to do great. I can't wait to work with you guys in the field.
Any other words before we wrap up? Any words of advice?
I mean, I might, I'm sorry. Real quick, I just might say that take pride in your work, do a good job, really go the extra mile. You'll get noticed and you'll get opportunities because of that. A lot of people get into these industries and they're going to do the bare minimum to get by. And those people tend to get stuck in their positions for their entire careers. Every day go home knowing that you've done the best that you can, that you put forth the extra effort, and it will pay off at the end.
Anything else? I want to go ahead now and just, first of all, thank you all for being with us this evening. We'll be seeing some of you back tomorrow night for the graduate school information and sharing. And I just want to mention that, first of all, I was really disappointed that we couldn't have this event in person, because just seeing you, having you all come back to campus, it's just heartwarming in being able to see y'all, because we do miss you. We remember you. It's so funny. Sometimes students will, email or phone me, and they'll start out by, Dr. Ann, this is so-and-so, and I was in da-da-da, and I'm thinking, I know who you are. I mean, truly, we really don't forget you. And just thank you for being the kind of professionals to take the time that you took this evening, it's been a long evening, to come and touch the lives of the students that are listening to you right now. And I want to thank the students for being committed enough to be here and stay with us through this time to make this connection. So you all just, again, hang in there through a pandemic, and you all have our emails. You have my email if you ever need me. And you all take care. Bye-bye.